How you doing, ladies and gentlemen? Sinister of the Gamer section bringing you an interview with a developer, and I'm your host. Before we begin, if you enjoy the content, be sure to leave us a like. With that being said, I'll go ahead and let our guest introduce himself.
Hi, so I'm Nicolas. I'm from the south of France. Maybe you noticed with the accent. And I'm old enough to have lived through most of the history of video games. I remember starting with, four-color PCs, Amstrad CPC, Sega Genesis, playing Sonic. Then I went through all the PC game history, starting in the early 1990s and seeing the first 3D video games, playing the first war game or strategy games. I remember really playing Dune 2. I think it was in 1990, well, a lot of time ago.
Right.
Yeah, that's always been interested in video game. And yeah, for many reasons, main reason being that I'm a developer by training. So I need to code for my equilibrium, and my job doesn't involve coding anymore. So I decided to start my own video game project. So it's a city building game where you set up some buildings and you try to have people survive inside. And yeah, the theme is space exploration, but space exploration with today's technology. Um, a lot of the space exploration games are set up far in the future. But okay, science fiction is fun, but I find myself much more involved if it is a story about today's technology, today's world. And we have the technology today to, build bases on the moon or Mars. We even had it in the 1960s. So what I'm trying to do with this video game is play an alternative history where, well, in the 1960s, we would have, built the first base on a village on the moon and then grow human presence in space.
Okay. What is the name of your project?
So the name is Outerspace Shack. So the Shack idea is because, the first bases in space will not be grandiose. It will be like, a small section of the submarine where people have to live for weeks or months. So that's how I got the name for the game.
Okay. Were there any influences for your game, like any outside sources, like say since you have a love for sci-fi, like Star Wars, Star Trek, or any sci-fi material?
Well, I quite like sci-fi. I am, well, as a teenager, I read the Dune series. Well, you could discuss for hours if Dune is sci-fi or not. Maybe it's not, but certainly since the Star Wars movie, I'm more into the Foundation series. By the way, the Foundation series from Isaac Asimov is really great.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you know the story. This guy, being able to predict history. But really, the inspiration for the game was, like the Apollo 11 movie that was out, was it 2 years ago? I think, or 2019 for the 50th year anniversary.
Yeah.
Just the current space exploration is fascinating for me, much more than science fiction. And another inspiration for the game was a game I played with my children, I think 4 or 5 years ago, called Dawn of Man. So it is also a city building game. It is set up in prehistory, so completely different from space exploration. But what I really liked is that the game managed to make us feel what prehistory was like, what it was like for the first human to transition from, hunting mammoths to setting up the first agriculture, having the first domestic animals. That was really great. It was a game done by a small team. I think there are 2 developers. So it made me feel, yeah, I'm probably able to create this kind of city building game. So that was the main inspiration. So you see, not science fiction, ironically, but a great game, certainly.
All right. Yeah. Before diving into Outer Space Shack, or did you like have any favorite video games growing up? I know you mentioned Sonic, but was there like any other favorites that come to mind?
Well, from the console era, Streets of Rage, also on the Sega Genesis, just for the sound. The music was incredible.
Yeah, Yuzo Koshiro's the band.
Yeah. Then after that, later certainly X-Wing and Wing Commander Privateer. It was kind of space combat games. And at that time, actually, space combat games were good because the computers were not able to have realistic first-person shooters or realistic plane simulation. So the first space games were because it was just easier for the computer. You have just a tiny space vessel, all the rest is black, but they were really great. Like I remember, after some little training at X-Wing, I could shoot one laser and kill one enemy starship. That was really great. Then certainly also Civilizations and SimCity. I think I've played through all the series. They were great. And recently, no, well, not that recently, but the Uncharted series that was on PlayStation. That's I think 10 years ago. It's basically a first-person shooter adventure kind of things like that, and it was really the image was really great.
All right.
So that's it. I think if you ask me, I could go on for 30 minutes, but.
All right. Yeah, I was just saying because speaking of sci-fi games, like I remember like one of the earlier Star Wars games. It was like it was one of the X-wing fighters. Basically, it was all vector based. You're basically in the X-wing. You just shooting down towers and other enemies that get in the way. Because like games like that kind of inspired me.
Yes, X-wing was the first. X-wing was just polygons, without textures. It has a little bit of quite good shading and special effects. Then you had TIE fighters that had a little bit of, I think it's called Phong effect, where the surfaces can be made a little bit round. And so those games were great, and they were just before we had 3D on everything.
Right.
I think 3D on everything probably arrived in, I don't know, 2003, 2005, maybe something like that. Maybe a little bit before. No, actually a little bit before, I think.
All right. All right. Moving on to Outerspace Shack. What's the presentation like?
So the game starts in your space base. And so it has all the classical gameplay of you've got a tech tree where you're doing some research to have better rockets or cheaper rockets or more reliable rockets, things like that. And then a big challenge of the game is the economics. And that's actually also a problem for real space exploration. It's great, but where does the money come from?
Right.
So right now in the early phase, it's more like, taking government contracts, like government will give you X billion of dollars to plant their flag on the moon. So you're setting up all that, you're setting your rockets, you're putting some stuff into the rockets. And one hard limit you have is that every pound costs a lot. I think the order of magnitude is that one Saturn V rocket is $1 billion. And it has 4 tons payload to the moon, something like that. So each pound, I think I will be off a little bit, but each pound is basically a few $1,000s. So you have to take care about what you bring and what you don't bring, and really, select what you bring. And then so you can have a first mission where you just go to the moon. So you develop your rocket, you go to the moon. And then you have more missions where you build your space base, and then the first stay of a man alone on the moon and things like that. So in the beginning, it's really like a contract, a little bit like Kerbal Space Program. You win money, earn money by contract, and then the idea later is to develop economics, like you buy stuff, sell stuff. This is something on which I will focus on the next 6 months. To be clear, it's not. This part is not super mature now.
Right.
Well, first because it's not developed in the game, but especially because it's not obvious to find good ideas. I'm trying to develop the game with everything being kind of realistic. The rockets cost the real price. They have the real payload. When you put solar panels, it's the real yield. It's not a lot. Solar panel gives you big 4 square meter solar panel gives you 700 watts. That's not enough to boil water for your tea. So all this is taken into account, but it's really I love to imagine something realistic so that people who go on the moon make money with it.
Right.
So I don't mining helium-3, things like that. Another idea is that when you're on the moon, it's actually quite easy to send things to space. Because what's costly in space is to get out of the Earth.
Right.
The Earth is what we call, a gravity well. So it's very deep, and you have to go out of this well to go to space. And when you're in space, going anywhere in space is cheap. It's long, but it's cheap.
Right.
But going out of the planet, a big planet like Earth, is very expensive.
Right.
And actually, we are at the limit of the size of planet where chemical rockets can get in space. If the Earth was like 10 or 20% bigger, probably chemical rockets would not work at all. So there's probably a business of mining stuff on the moon and sending it to somewhere in space. So I have to think about all that. It's not yet present in the game, but I think that's really important to make the game interesting. Right now, it's more, government contracts to build a more and more ambitious space station.
Okay. All right. In your game, are there any still shots to tell what the story is like or how you're progressing? Because
yeah, that's something. Well, the missions you take tell a story. So you are presented with the missions that are adapted to your stage. So it's like of guiding you through different possibilities. Then I think your question is very good because that makes the game more lively. The other equivalent game I played, I mentioned Dawn of Man, for example, Planet Base is another one. They have some kind of milestones, but probably they could go further into telling a story and making people engage with the adventure. So your suggestion is actually very, very good.
Right.
Today, I implemented really only the story around the missions, but you're right, there should be more.
All right. Speaking of it, what was the software that you used to develop your game?
So I decided to go with Unity for 2 reasons. First reason is that it's the default choice. And on some previous IT project, I made very original choices and it was not a success.
Right.
So I told to myself, this time you're going to stick with standard stuff, and Unity is basically the standard. And then there are a lot of great free software to develop games like Blender for 3D, Inkscape for icons and things like that. So I've got 5 or 6 other free software to do all the stuff around the game.
All right. Speaking of it, what are the pros and cons of the software that you use?
Well,
from your experience, or say example, you've done good with this, and you probably made some mistakes with that. As you experiment with creating your game, because
So I think it depends from the profile of people. As I'm a developer but with no experience in video game, and the mistake we often do is to try to recode everything by hand, whereas it already exists in the game engine. So one of my challenges is to not start stupidly coding something, but think before, is there a feature in the game engine I could reuse? So usually it involves research on typing what you want to do on YouTube with the keyword Unity, and there are tons of tutorial video. It's really impressive. Not all of them are super good, but they give you a pointer, and so typically you learn what is a good solution after some time. So yes, I think that the biggest mistake is trying to redo by hand coding, because I'm able to do coding. Maybe that's different from other people who start video game and don't have a lot of experience in coding. I tend to code too much.
Right. Yeah, because like I said in previous interviews I've done, because usually like the people I've talked to, they use like different software like Blender. Of course, the big one is of course Unreal Engine, and the other things. Is usually what they use is like they feel comfortable with. It's easier for them because after experimenting with and probably have got more experience with using to create their games. So it's interesting, because like the methods like people like of software that they use just to create their games, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Unreal has the reputation of being a little bit harder to use, but more high performance.
Mhm.
Like more, I understand that you would use Unreal more to create, a triple A game with realistic graphics. And Unity has the reputation to be maybe a little bit less powerful, but easier to use.
Right.
Honestly, right now, no, I cannot complain about the software Unity. The biggest problem is between the chair and the keyboard, and that's me. That's my lack of
Right.
experience. So, no,
Right.
I think Unity is good enough for my talent today.
All right, that's good. Speaking of your project, is it just you working on it by yourself, or do you have like other people like helping you, like y'all come together just to create your games?
So it's mostly me. My children help me a little bit. It's
Oh,
quite funny. Um, because it's a project they are really interested. So it helps me staying relevant with my children, which is important.
well, yeah,
A dad who creates video game is cooler than a dad that does only accounting.
yeah, family affair.
Uh, and so yeah, that they help me a little bit. Then after that, to be honest, also I buy some assets.
Mhm.
So for things I'm not able to do myself. So I'm able to draw machinery, for example.
Uh-huh.
I'm not good enough to draw trees or to draw even human body. This one I reuse the free model, but I'm trying to get assets here and there to help me, and um, and it's very interesting that you can buy 10 or $20
Uh-huh.
things that will take you hours to create. So I think there's a balance in it. I think there are some beginners that start by buying $5,000 of assets, and that's probably not good. But I
Right.
think recently I purchased for like $100 of stuff, and it really changed, made the game better. So that's one way. I try to get a good result, but also I am alone, and of course, as I am alone, I have less time than a team.
Okay. Speaking of your children, like, what were their roles in helping you with, like, say, like for you, you do like the coding, like, what were their other roles in helping you with your projects?
Honestly, finding ideas,
Hmm.
testing the game a lot, sometimes drawing me some stuff, but they're less than 10 years old, so they're helping a little bit, but they will not do the coding. As the oldest one does a little bit of 3D modeling. So it's
Okay.
quite easy to do for children.
Well, that's cool having a family affair and bringing their talents together. Yeah, because speaking of that, do you ever like putting your game like on Steam or Epic Store or things like that, or do you ever have like a demo out?
So, well, the game actually, there is a game page on Steam so that
Hmm.
people can wishlist it. After that, I did a Kickstarter campaign in November.
Uh-huh.
That had a quite, let's say, modest goal, but I was able to reach it.
Hmm.
And I'm actually using the money from the Kickstarter to buy the assets I mentioned before, like the nice trees. Another example of asset I bought this weekend was a 1960s vintage muscle car.
Okay.
Well, I'm not good at drawing cars, so I'm and so some of the Kickstarter backers, I think it was a second level of second tier of backing, could have access to the alpha game, and so I've got the alpha game being tested by 50 people right now.
Okay, that's good. All right. Usually I ask the same questions like to everyone else. Like, I say your game is out, it's successful. Do you ever plan on doing like adding expansions to it, or do you plan on like just moving on to a new project, or say like a follow up to your game, or probably just something else in general?
So generally, I am much more persistent than the average guy.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that in my work and in my private projects.
Right.
So I think I will stick with the game very long.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I have a lot of ideas of expansions. So right now, the idea is that the first version, you will be able to go to the moon or go to Mars.
Right.
But there are like a dozen interesting locations in the solar system, which, will be a little bit work to add to the game, but would use the game base, the game engine, so it will go faster. Exciting locations include the Venus clouds.
Right.
Well, Venus is a very hostile planet. Like on the surface, it's like
Uh-huh.
400 degrees Celsius. But if you go in the atmosphere and you have like big balloon cities,
Yeah.
it will be quite good conditions actually. You would have a lot of good temperature, a lot of air pressure, you're shielded from space radiation. So this is just an example, but there are 10 or so different locations in the solar system that are interesting. So I think I could have for, I don't know, 3 to 5 years worth of content that I could add to make the game more exciting.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, yeah, because like I can't wait to see how your game when it's fully completed. They see how your world is like through your eyes. Like, like I said, you put a lot of work into it, and plus your children helping you out. That's also cool. And of course, like with Steam, Steam's been helping like a lot of creators out, like getting their projects off the ground and I don't know things like that. So,
Yeah, from what I heard, Steam is also very saturated. It used to be that when you put your game on Steam, it was somehow selected or curated by the Steam team. And
mhm.
now you just have to pay, I think, $100.
Right,
So almost everybody can get his game on Steam. So yeah, it's not because you have a Steam page that your game will have any success. Actually, I think that a lot of games, they are released on Steam and they have very small success. So my feeling is that you still need to do the marketing to find champions that can promote your game and things like that. Just putting it on Steam is not enough.
right. Oh yeah, definitely marketing is a big key because like you definitely want to put your network out there, like probably through social media and other means just to get your game out there, just to promote your content. So that way, probably draw more people to your project. It's like, hey, like to check this game out. Like a lot of people like to go to Steam and say, hey, we want to check your game out. Like say like people who are into that genre, the sci-fi genre, like it's like hey, like they want to check this game out, and they would definitely want to play it, see see what your world is all about and try it and possibly play it, when it's fully done.
Yep, for sure. And also, I'm trying to promote the game to all the places where fans of space exploration gather.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think some people who are not that much in video game but are really passionate about space exploration, and there are a lot.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who, especially in the US where you have a lot of rocket launches, when there
Right,
is a lot of rocket launch, there are some guys, traveling 3 days one way and 3 days return just to see the rocket launch, sleeping
right,
in their cars. So there's a crowd of people passionate about space exploration because I
right,
think we all have the feeling this is the future of humanity somehow.
right. Yeah,
And I hope those people will know about us. Well, I have to work hard so that those people know about
mm-hmm.
the game, and I think a few of them will actually enjoy it. So
Yeah,
I
because
will.
Twitter, that's a good place. Like, I'm sure there's probably people who are passionate, like probably in that community. They'll probably love like to collaborate. But speaking of that, like say probably down the line, would you probably reach out for somebody in the Steam community, probably collaborate on like on a future project, probably sci-fi or space like, dealing with space?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, from my experience, it's finding someone to collaborate on is like finding a girlfriend or boyfriend. It's you find them when you're not looking for them.
Right.
So yeah, for sure. If I can do a project with other people, that will be great. And even on the current project, I think at some point I have to find a musician to work with, because music is a big part of video games.
Right.
And I have quite a precise idea of what I would like to do. I enjoyed so much that's an old game. I'm not sure you know about it, but Wing Commander Privateer.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And it had a great soundtrack, some kind of a little bit sad, jazzy, electronic music.
Right.
And I think that's exactly the style of music you need for a space game, because you need something a little bit moody, a little bit nostalgic, where you feel like space is wide and you're alone, and it's great, but it's also a little bit sad because you left all your friends behind. So yeah, I'd really like to add that kind of music to the game. So at some point, yeah, I have to find someone who can help me on that.
All right, that's cool. All right. All right. Well, basically, this will conclude our interview. And like I said, it's been an honor interviewing you. Been passionate about your project, and definitely, can't wait to check it out. But, before we go, do you want to tell everyone out there where they can find you at?
Yeah, so at Outerspace Shack on Twitter, I think that's an easy way. Else, outerspaceshack.com without comma or dash or anything, just outerspaceshack.com. And here you can subscribe to the newsletter, which is a great way to get stay in tune with the project. There's also a Steam page, so just search for Outerspace Shack. And also I'm continuing crowdfunding on Indiegogo. So Indiegogo Outerspace Shack, you should find the project page. If you want to join the backers community, and if you're interested, you could be playing the game tomorrow. The alpha is ongoing, so it will be great to have more people testing.
All right. All right, y'all. That concludes another show. I'm your host, Sinister. You can find me on all my social medias, Country19, which you see on the screen on Twitter. And you also can find me on Instagram, Sinister1019. And this concludes your show. And like I said, Nikolai, it's been great to interview. And to everyone out there, I hope you enjoy your day, enjoy your weekend.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you.
All right.